Greetings to all family. I am doing this particular video to share with you my adventures in my first opportunity for travel, international travel in ministry. I have traveled internationally before. I have traveled for ministry before, but not simultaneously both of those things yet. So this past month, which is January 2023, newness in the Gregorian calendar. And so a new adventure awaited me and excited. So Adonai Arts Worship Center in BVI, British Virgin Islands, that acronym is short for Sister Eagles who are there from Eagles International Training Institute invited me to come to minister as a part of their Advancing the Kingdom Conference, which I'm told was pretty much an annual conference until shutdown happened in 2020, and will continue to be, as much as is allowed, an annual conference. So this was the first time they met since the shutdown, and since things opened back up, so this is the first time they had that conference since that time, and so it is expected that they'll continue on again. And beautiful place, as well as beautiful people. We'll get into more of that shortly. So started off on a Thursday afternoon, evening, from work to the airport. I did not get to fly out of my favorite airport. Normally, I live in Chicago, so normally I travel out of our smaller airport, which is not technically small. However, in comparison to the other airport, which also does lots of international travel, it's smaller, significantly smaller. And so headed to that large airport, O'Hare Airport, and to prep to get there early for the flight and check in and all of those kinds of things. And I normally travel with my passport anyway, so that wasn't anything new or different. Although oftentimes in the States, I'm able to use my passport card. And since this was not in the States, they didn't allow that. They like, we need to see your passport. And so, so that was it. And I guess I should preface by saying that I didn't feel like I had a whole lot of time in preparation for the trip. I believe it was mentioned to me late November, early December, somewhere around there, looking forward to January. However, I hadn't had yet the details at the time that it was mentioned to me, and I took it to my leaders to pray and to garner their release to travel there and to teach. And so, once that process was done, I probably erroneously did this, but maybe you can learn from it. I waited to hear from them after I'd given a yes, and it took a little time. I hadn't heard for some time, and I reached out and asked for what is the logistical information so that I could plan to try to set up travel and lodging and all the other things, but I wasn't sure what the details were initially. And so once I started getting that information, that was very helpful in starting to plan, looking forward. They did give me some thoughts on better ways to travel, to the different options that were available, and what most of the international travelers that come for their annual conference do. I happened to be on a bit of a timeline because it was midweek when the conference was happening, towards the end of the week, but still more middle of the week, and then into and through the weekend. And so most of the rest of the international portion of the travelers and those that were connected to the conference were traveling on Wednesday to get there late Wednesday, and then to be there Thursday through Sunday, and then to travel back Monday, probably making it home more like Tuesday. And so that was not quite my timeline. If I wanted to make sure that I had all things in order, and I hadn't made arrangements for this lengthy amount of time prior, a ways prior, so that I could have coverage and those kinds of things. So yeah, left out that evening, flew directly to San Juan, Puerto Rico. And so that was a bit of a flight length and a couple of time zones crossing. And so I got there, and there was a layover there in San Juan, Puerto Rico, until the morning when my flight would leave there to head to BVI, and I would make it there on Friday morning. And so did that. It was a really good experience. I thought some of my leaders were not happy or not comfortable with that, but I thoroughly enjoyed every portion of the trip. Enjoyed the time that I spent there in San Juan, and got some souvenirs for family and all those other things. Then proceeded to because Puerto Rico itself is an island, so we left in a plane smaller than any planes that I've actually flown, and I'm gonna say it was maybe a little bit bigger than sort of a plane you might see with just a couple of passengers and a pilot. And it wasn't that small at all, because it probably fit about 20 of us or something like that. But needless to say, it was smaller, and I could see the propeller of the wing, like right outside my window as we were flying. And it was an experience. I rather liked it. I did. I had not had that experience before, and it was really fun. It was really easy to see, like outside of the plane. It was a small plane, so it was pretty easy to see everything. We flew over many islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands. I'm sure there were some other islands that we flew over and past, as well as some of the other islands that are linked to Great Britain, as opposed to the American side in the Bahamas, or rather, sorry, in the Caribbean. And so we flew over and past so many of those, and it was just amazing just to see the wonderful little islands all dotted inside and then to kind of see little houses poking out on the sides of them, some of them up in the mountains, the beaches, the water, beautiful ocean or sea water, because it's called the Caribbean Sea, right? And so, yes, it was amazing. It was wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And on the way over, just so happened that the seats were two-seaters. So there were two seats on the left side of the aisle, two seats on the right side of the aisle, as opposed to larger planes where you usually have three seats on either side, and then really large planes where you have like these rows. There's some in the middle, some on the left side, some on the right side, and aisles in between each one, those kinds of things. So this was a smaller, and I didn't have anyone sitting next to me. It was just me. And so had the window right here, freedom over here, nobody sitting next to me or anything. And yeah, it was wondrous. It was really, really nice. Really, really nice. So, and I didn't describe this because I don't know if anybody else has done this before, but I never have flown thus far where I actually walked out on the tarmac and climbed the stairs to the plane. Now, I've seen that in pictures. And I've seen like dignitaries do that where they're like going right out. I mean, walking right out to where the plane is, and there's no uh, uh, jetway that connects it to the space that you're in the airport. And that, no, when we went out the gate, we were walking on the actual tarmac. On that space, and they're like, okay, don't, make sure you stay out of this red area where the propellers are. There's a lined area there, or cones are there, in some places. And go over to the stairs and walk on up. Yeah, so so that was adventurous too. Same thing as we landed in BVI. We landed on Beef Island, which is where the airport is, BVI. And Beef Island is connected to the place where the conference was, Tortola, which is the larger of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Tortola is. And so it was connected by a bridge, rather famous bridge that was created um, or actually when it was made was dedicated by Queen Elizabeth, now the former Queen Elizabeth. And she came and, they had a large ceremony for the bridge that connected Beef Island, which is a little small island, to the larger island Tortola by a bridge. And the bridge will take you over to Beef Island where the airport is and to where the ferries dock as well. And so that's a little bit of history, but it was awesome and amazing. So we landed down on Beef Island, and same thing, walk right on the tarmac on out. They put the little cones out to make sure you stayed outside of the space of where the propellers were and the engines are going and those kinds of things. Because I hear that's very, very dangerous. Even in smaller planes, there's a lot of wind action that's created, and strength that's created that can cause injury and things like that. So we did that, and they, have someone guide you. You walk on in, to the airport. Beautiful, small little airport. And then they had a driver to meet me there at the airport, along with a matron who was assigned to me we would probably call them in our country, in the U.S., or maybe it's just in the circles in which the faith circles in which I am connected. We call them armor bearers oftentimes. And so there was someone assigned, to me to make sure that I got to my room, make sure I was called whenever I needed to be. If I needed anything, she would make sure that was communicated to the group, and all of those things, anything I needed to support in, that she would be there to help. And the drivers, there were a couple of different drivers, but the drivers, they would also, and this is British Virgin Islands, so so yes, they drive on the other side of the road, one thing, but they have cars that have two different ways. So some of the cars are made in that British style where the driver's side is actually over on the right side. But there's some that the driver's side is like our American side is on the left in the car. Now you drive on the road on the other side. What in the car? Like, so it depended on what car I was in, where I got in on the passenger side. So that was a little bit hokey. I was just like, oh, I'm going to the wrong side. Let me go to the other side to get in, because this is not the kind of car that I'm used to, or it is the kind of car I'm used to. So let me go around to the other side to get in, because, So yes, that was a little bit of interesting too. So once I got there, it was now Friday morning. And most of the rest of the party had gotten there Thursday, sometime Thursday during the daytime, or Thursday evening. And Friday morning, they'd gone out on a ministry trip to a school to make donations of supplies, to sing with the children, to pray with them, for them, those kinds of things. And so that was missed by me, but I'm sure it was an excellent, wonderful, beautiful event and a part of the ministry of the conference. Then once I got there, they were just finishing that piece of it up and coming back. I stayed at the hotel where the conference was held, Maria's by the Sea, and it was beautiful, right, right off the water. And we left the airport, stopped to grab a bite. The conference host, Eagle Janelle, Apostle Janelle, she actually owns multiple businesses there, and one of them happens to be a restaurant. Most excellent food, I must say. I don't remember the name of the restaurant. I'll have to get that, but most excellent food it was. The food was really good, and it had me dreaming of having more of that food. I didn't get to have more of it while I was there, but I really wish I had gotten to have more of it, or gotten like a bag to take away with me or something like that. That was neither here nor there. So I ate, and then changed, because I still had really my clothes from being in the cold weather still kind of on, and then I needed to change sort of more to island attire that is a little cooler. So did that, and we went to minister at a nursing home. I don't know if they call them nursing homes there, but a nursing home, a convalescent home, where they had residents that stay there and live there, and the workers attend to them, to all of their needs, most of them having special needs. And so we got there, we sang like songs, hymns, prayed for the staff, prayed for the residents, and it was just a joy, just brought tears to my eyes to see when we would sing those older songs. There were ones who, had been unresponsive, or just kind of, not really responding much. There were several that, they were just into it. They were like, yes, and in their way of communicating, sharing that. But then some, who were not so responsive initially. But once we got to singing some of the older songs, the hymns that you might hear, in a Baptist church, or in an older Pentecostal kind of setting, those kinds of things, they started to sing with us. They, started to tap, or they, calmed. And it was just wonderful and beautiful to be there, to minister the love of God, to share God's love and his fellowship with them, and to pray for the strength of the staff and for their protection, for the protection of the residents from sickness and illness and disease and all of those kinds of things. And it was just a wondrous time, and loved it, loved it, loved it. We left there and got to rest for a short time, and then had service that night at a church facility. And when we went to the church facility, we were there for ministry and movement. The theme was of the 7 mountains, and influencing and impacting those for God, right there in BVI and around the world. And so I ministered a movement with the movement ministers, and also spoke on the mountain of education and the importance thereof, those pieces. And there were others that spoke on all of the other 7 mountains. And we got to see ministry from a variety of the sister ministries that are connected with EITI, with the Eagles, from the U.S. Virgin Islands, from the children that are there at BVI, their portion of the ministry with the Eagles Network with 10. Also, a government official also spoke regarding government and the body of Christ, bringing God's kingdom to the earth and government, and specifically in BVI, as well as Anguilla, I think, was the other island that we had people from, and so there were several of those Caribbean Sea represented spaces and places that came over to share in the conference, as well as to minister movement, as well as to speak on those seven mountains and the importance thereof. So it was just a wonderful time in the Lord. Beautiful, excellent. Lasted so kind of long, yep. So we were into the night by that time, and then yeah, I was ready for bed. So yeah, and we had an early morning the next morning to get up for the actual conference. Um, and now I didn't get to see a lot of the island outside. It wasn't vacation. It was like working. It really was working. And so in driving, we would pass by and we saw a beautiful sunset across the water on one of the trips on the way to the church on Friday night. And then in the morning, I was able to get up and then actually see the sunrise on the water. So all of those had a wonderful view from my room, from the balcony. Beautiful, excellent, but upright again early and ready to minister. The conference on Saturday had sessions. And so the first session was all together, worship, praise and worship, and encouragement, edification, the prophetic. Then we shifted into breakout sessions, where I was to minister to the children, youth, and teens. And the morning session was awesome. One of our leaders had the children to come and lead praise and worship along with the worship team, the musicians, as well as the singers. It was awesome and amazing. Got to share with them and do some leading and following with the team and with the kids right up at the front. That was beautiful. The second session, we took them over to the room that was designated for us. There were about 23 of children, probably from about the ages of 4 to 14, 15. And we got them fed. We had some food for them. I think it came from that really good restaurant again. Yum, yum. So some great food for the kids. And then once they got fed, got them all settled, and then we did our session and our lesson on advancing the kingdom for them. And so talked about similarly what we'd gone over the night before on Friday about those seven mountains and how they fit, how their gifts and talents fit, etc. It was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. The kids had such hearts for God. About maybe 15 of them were ones that were connected to the international ministry. So they kind of, knew that setup and all that. But the others either were younger and had not been, or, were just coming in for the conference with their parents. And so they were participating as well. They all shared about their gifts, and we had a little acronym for the conference, ATK, and they all made movement to it. And it was just a glorious time. We shared scripture and we talked about how God uses us, did movement around that as well, and where we fit in the body of Christ, where we fit in his kingdom, making sure we all receive Jesus in our hearts, and then also where do our gifts fit in those mountains. And so that's what we went over with the kids. Excuse me. So once that was complete, we rejoined the rest of the adults, the groups, to close out the session, and that was also wonderful and amazing. And then it was cleanup time, so we did, the cleanup from the conference and that, a little bit of work too again, and got a chance to rest for a couple of hours. And then that evening, we were taking the ferry over to another one of the islands to have dinner and to fellowship with one another. So the group of those that were participating in the conference, and then some of those that had come over for Friday night as well, came with us. And so we ate, fellowshipped, beautiful view, sunset, took a ferry over, and then ferried back that evening at the end, and made it back to the hotel to rest for a few hours again, because bright and early in the morning, even a little earlier than on the conference day, we were scheduled to head to church on Sunday on another one of the islands, Virgin Gorda, and to go and minister. Some of us were ministering in movement there, as well as, just taking a blessing. And one of our group was also ministering, speaking specifically that morning to the church and in prophecy, in the prophetic. And so we, headed to the dock. I thought we were taking a ferry, but we're not taking a ferry. We actually had one of our party, one of our group, the family owns a boat. And so we took their boat over to Virgin Gorda from the island of Tortola. And so, went over there. It was awesome and amazing again. Some beautiful, beautiful, pictures out on the water. And I did recognize that in the place where I was sitting on the boat, that it was a place that was known to get a little sprayed and wet, right? Wetness doesn't really bother me much, those kinds of things. And they had a place down in the boat where you could go and sit down there for the ride over. And it was interesting riding the boat across the sea. So yeah, literally, and it was like a motorboat. So it had a motor and all that, but not like a little motorboat. But there were about 10 of us maybe that were on it all together. Maybe more than 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Maybe about 16 of us were there. Brought my luggage with me because I was actually leaving midday to head back over to Beef Island to the airport to get ready, prepared for my flight to leave. And yeah, sort of about a little more than halfway there. I don't know what they call the place that you hit when it comes to this land mass underneath, where there's a break in the water. I don't know if it's called the bluffs or whatever, but there's a space, and so when the boat goes through, there's lots of water coming at it and splashing over, right? And so we were getting sprinkled. And I just called it being baptized in the sea, because we were in the Caribbean Sea, right? And I'd never been baptized in salt water, I'd never been baptized in the sea, but I got baptized in the sea that day. And it was just like more and more every time we went out. So they were like, oh, come down. I'm like, it's okay. I'm getting the actual real experience. And the water was warm. It wasn't cold or anything like that. It was very good. I just didn't recognize, most of the other people kind of, recognized this and brought like a change of clothes. They brought like, I guess, boating clothes that they could get wet and whatever. And then they changed when they got there. And so I didn't know about that. So I hadn't brought any. Well, I had my clothes to change in if I needed to change in, but I was already in my travel clothes, so I didn't plan to change, if that makes sense. And so, anyway, so we were on our way, getting wet, and they were like, no, come down. And so I did. I went on down, and that was fine. I was damp, pretty damp, damp and salty. Not in a bad way at all, but damp and salty, which is kind of what you expect from baptism. And just before I actually went down, Covenant met us, and there was a rainbow behind us. And so I, quickly snapped a shot of the rainbow. It was amazing. It was beautiful. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I think they thought I was a little bit weird, but that's okay. I didn't mind, because I did. It was such a great experience for me. I love those real experiences, natural experiences, those kinds of things. And so I was a little damp, a little drippy, a little salty. So when we got there, I did kind of wash my face a bit because the salt water was still there. But I sort of stood out in the sun a little to dry the clothing portion. It's still a little damp, I'm sure, but it wasn't as wet as I was sitting next to someone in the church and that kind of thing. So yes, so did that. When we got off the boat, we actually had to take a ride over to the church, and so we got vehicles and went on over. Beautiful service. Like I said, there was movement ministry, there was praise and worship, there was the pastor speaking, there was the guest minister from our group who ministered and prophesied, and all of those pieces. And it was wonderful online too, so others could see it with us. Just excellent. Once church was done, they had like food afterwards, and so got a little bit to a bite to eat a little bit, and then the driver drove me over to the ferry stop on Virgin Gorda to go back to Beef Island, where the airport is. And so did that. They of course were going to go back on the boat, but that was for them later. They had another stop to make, I think, at another church. And so I headed over to Beef Island on the ferry and got there, walked over to the airport, which was like 5 minutes, a 5-minute walk. It was really right there. And then, proceeded to get ready to check in. Well, it's a smaller airport.